makes you wonder what he's done with his life. But no, of course, this is all just this. I mean, it's so pathetic watching him wriggle like that. He failed to stand up for his very brave female MP, Rosie Duffield.
So, is Keir Starmer really the worst Prime Minister the UK has ever had? Well, according to political firebrand Douglas Murray, that might just be the case. Yeah, Murray didn't hold back when he launched a series of brutal verbal attacks on Starmer and exposed him. According to Murray, the country is heading towards a critical juncture, and under the current leadership, the nation could be on the brink of serious decline. He tore into Starmer's inability to make decisive choices, accusing him of flip-flopping on key issues and lacking any clear vision for the country. From failing to tackle the cost of living crisis to mishandling cultural debates, Murray didn't just criticise, he obliterated Starmer's leadership. And trust me, he made sure the whole UK was watching. So, is the UK really entering the dark days? Let's break it down.
By the historic Labour landslide of Keir Starmer, a man who absolutely nobody is enthusiastic about.
Now, before we get into the roasting that Murray just unleashed on Starmer, let me jog up your memory real quick. Starmer took over Labour in 2020, right after their crushing defeat in the general election, where Boris Johnson's Conservative Party obliterated them. Starmer stepped into the role with a reputation as a smart, no-nonsense guy with a solid legal background, as he is the former Director of Public Prosecutions. Fast forward to 2024, he led Labour to a historic landslide victory in the July election, securing 401 seats and ending 14 years of Conservative rule, despite winning just 34% of the vote. But here's the twist. As Prime Minister, Starmer's leadership hasn't exactly set the UK on fire. In fact, according to Murray, it's been the opposite.
Have shown double and triple standards just in recent days alone. Last week, Keir Starmer said that Britain would back Ukraine with giving them whatever was needed. That was the quote, whatever was needed for Ukraine to prosecute its war against Russia after the illegal invasion of Ukraine. At the same time as saying that they will give Ukraine whatever they need. And by the way, Britain is not going to give Ukraine everything it needs. Britain can't give Ukraine everything it needs. But that's what he says. Meantime, he's not even willing to sell the Israelis the things that they need to prosecute their war against.
One thing about Douglas Murray is that the man does not hold back when it comes to speaking his mind. Let's just say he's not afraid to ruffle some feathers. Whether he's writing for The Spectator, debating woke culture, or dismantling liberal politics on TV, Murray is always bringing that sharp, witty and brutally honest energy. He's like the UK's answer to Ben Shapiro, but with a British accent and even more savage takes.
Yes, I mean, it's very hard to summon up any care for which of the sort of creations that have been offered to the Labour Party.
So, when Douglas Murray gets fired up about something, or in this case, someone, you know it's going to be a takedown for the history books. And trust me, Murray did not hold back when talking about Starmer's time as PM. Alright, here's where things get spicy. Murray has called Starmer one of the most disappointing and ineffective leaders in modern British history. Yup, we're talking about the Prime Minister of the UK being absolutely dragged by one of the country's sharpest political minds. In an interview that's been going viral, Murray ripped into Starmer's leadership style, calling him a man without a spine and accusing him of being all talk, no action. Starmer has been accused of being indecisive and, even worse, of having no clear vision for the country's future. Hear me out. The British government, under Keir Starmer's rule, is facing a massive series of challenges, and Douglas Murray hasn't been shy about pointing them out. Despite Labour's landslide election victory, Starmer has inherited a political and economic landscape that's anything but rosy. And Murray is quick to say that Starmer's win was driven more by the public's disillusionment with the Conservatives, rather than any real enthusiasm for Labour's policies. But now, the hard part begins, managing a country that's on the brink in so many areas. First off, the UK's largest water company, Thames Water, is drowning in debt, over $18 billion of it to be exact. For years, this issue has been simmering under the surface, but now it's reached a boiling point. Thames Water's infrastructure is crumbling, and shareholders are locked in a standoff with the government's water regulator, Ofwat. And let's not forget the environmental impact. Pollution, outdated systems, and leaky pipes are making things worse for the public. Murray wasted no time in calling out the complete mess that's landed on Starmer's lap. With nationalisation potentially on the table, Starmer may need to take drastic and costly action to prevent the company from going under. But Murray argues this is just the start of Starmer's struggles with failing public services. It's a no-win situation, and if Starmer doesn't act, people will suffer. If he does, the costs could skyrocket. Next up, prisons. England and Wales have a huge overcrowding problem. Prisons are at 99% capacity, and this doesn't just affect inmates, it causes knock-on effects throughout the entire criminal justice system, delaying court cases and complicating sentencing decisions. Starmer has promised to increase prison capacity by building more facilities, but let's face it, that's going to take years. In the meantime, he may be forced to release low-risk prisoners early, a move that's sure to spark public outrage. And Murray, well, he's not convinced that simply building more prisons is the solution, labelling it a short-term band-aid for a long-term problem. Starmer's critics argue that reforming the criminal justice system should be the priority, but will he have the political capital to pull it off? And speaking of political capital, Starmer's relationship with the public sector trade unions is already on shaky ground. Public sector workers, from nurses to teachers, have suffered through years of stagnant wages, and they're expecting big things from Labour. But Murray's take? He believes that Starmer's promises will come back to bite him. With inflation finally easing and interest rates expected to fall, Starmer may struggle to justify substantial pay increases. His Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, isn't showing signs of loosening the purse strings either. Murray has blasted Starmer for what he sees as Labour's inability to manage the economy effectively, predicting that the unions could soon turn against him, plunging the UK into strikes and unrest if their demands aren't met. It's a lose-lose situation for Starmer, and Murray's ready to call him out on every misstep. But wait, there's more. The UK's universities are also in crisis mode, and the collapse of overseas student numbers has put many institutions on the verge of bankruptcy. Home tuition fees haven't kept pace with inflation, leaving universities strapped for cash. Starmer's options here are limited. He can either raise tuition fees, which would trigger a political firestorm, or throw government money at the problem, money that Britain doesn't have. Murray has openly criticised Starmer's vague approach to higher education funding, calling it wishy-washy and lacking in substance. It's a delicate issue that could turn even more voters against Labour if it's mishandled. Starmer's government is facing a whopping £12 billion funding shortfall in the health service. Waiting times are spiralling out of control, pay disputes are rampant, and infrastructure is crumbling. Labour's manifesto promises some reforms, but according to Murray, it's just not enough. Murray has been relentless in attacking Starmer's leadership on this front, pointing out that despite Labour's rhetoric, they haven't provided concrete numbers or solutions, and the NHS is always a litmus test for UK governments. Get it wrong, and the political fallout could be catastrophic. Starmer's going to need more than platitudes to fix this one, but Murray isn't holding his breath. Finally, local councils are in dire straits. Years of Conservative austerity have left many local authorities on the brink of bankruptcy. 8 councils have already declared bankruptcy since 2018, and even more are expected to follow suit unless Starmer intervenes. But, as Murray points out, Starmer hasn't offered any concrete solutions for local government reform either. And here's the kicker. Local councils provide vital everyday services, from waste collection to social care, that millions of people depend on. If more councils go bankrupt, the public is going to feel the pinch, and they'll look to Starmer for answers. So, what does Murray think is at the heart of Starmer's failure? Simple. He thinks Starmer lacks conviction. That's a big deal, because conviction is what separates real leaders from the rest. Murray points out that Starmer has flip-flopped on so many issues, from Brexit to free speech, that it's hard to know what he actually believes. For instance, Starmer originally campaigned for a second Brexit referendum, but later accepted the result of the 2016 vote to leave the European Union. Sure, changing your mind isn't always bad, but doing it without a clear explanation, yeah, that just makes people think you're not sure what you stand for. And Murray didn't stop there. He also slammed Starmer's handling of free speech issues. According to Murray, Starmer has caved to the woke crowd, prioritising political correctness over genuine leadership. And in Murray's eyes, that's a huge no-no. Oh, and don't even get Murray started on culture wars. One of the biggest criticisms Murray launched at Starmer is how he's allowed the UK to get sucked into divisive culture wars instead of focusing on what really matters. Murray accused Starmer of pandering to the woke crowd, especially when it comes to free speech. In Murray's view, Starmer has allowed political correctness to run rampant in the UK, and he's done nothing to push back. Remember the whole debacle with Labour MPs getting in trouble for not being woke enough? Yeah, Murray wasn't having any of that. Murray warned that under Starmer, free speech is under threat in the UK. Whether it's universities censoring speakers or cancel culture hitting public figures, Murray believes Starmer hasn't done enough to defend the right to speak freely. And for someone like Murray, who's all about speaking truth, that's a major problem. But here's the kicker. While Murray was obliterating Starmer's record as PM, there's been a bit of a twist in the UK's political landscape. Despite all this criticism, Starmer's Labour Party has gained popularity in the polls recently. So what's going on here? Are people starting to support Starmer because they actually believe in him? Or are they just fed up with the chaos that followed the Boris Johnson era and the revolving door of Conservative leaders? It's kind of like choosing the least worst option rather than voting out of genuine excitement.
True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update. We demand a people's house. We demand a people's house. We are in crisis. We are in crisis.
Murray believes that Starmer's rise in the polls isn't because people think he's a great leader, but rather because the alternatives like Rishi Sunak have been so underwhelming. It's more about survival than thriving, and that's not a good look for Starmer. So what do you think? Is Douglas Murray right about Keir Starmer being the worst PM the UK has ever had? Or do you think there's still hope for Starmer to prove himself? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.